Good morning, everyone. My name is Sophie Bostock, and I would like to welcome you to this special Q&A all about the science of sleep. I'm just going to give folks a few more minutes to join us. I think it's 8:59 by my clock, so we'll crack on at 9 a.m. So welcome to day one of Healthy Week, which has kind of got a bit of a sleepy theme this week, which we will tell you more about. So basically, over the next 30 minutes, I'm here to give you an introduction to the science of sleep, and then I'll be here to answer as many of your questions as possible. So if there is anything about sleep that you have always been intrigued to know but never known who to ask, then please send me an email via healthy_week@cable.comcast.com, and I will do my best to answer. The only restriction, for obvious reasons, is that I won't give any individual medical advice, but I can absolutely uncover sleep myths, talk about common sleep problems, and share techniques which everyone can use to optimize their sleep. So at the moment, I'm at Universal's offices in LA, which is very exciting. I'm from London, so I'm feeling a little bit sleep deprived myself, but I'll do my best to stay on the ball. Despite appearances, I am actually not in this alone. I have a hidden team behind the scenes, collating questions from emails and prioritizing them. So when you see me looking over in this direction, I'm not actually trying to spot film stars. I'm reading a screen where some extra questions are being typed. So as I'm sure you know, this week is Healthy Week. You all get to find out more about all of the wonderful ways that Comcast NBCU can help to keep you healthy. And this year, there's a distinctly sleepy theme. There's a new program called Sleepio, and I'm a health psychologist with the Sleepio team, and I'll tell you a bit more about that later on. But first, many of you are probably wondering why sleep? What's sleep got to do with health? Well, in a nutshell, an awful lot. So sleep is absolutely essential for life. We can survive for at least twice as long without food as we can without sleep. And when you think about it from an evolutionary perspective, we spend a third of our lives sleeping. So it must be pretty important. In fact, scientists are still working out all the wonderful things that happen while we sleep. But what we do know is that when we don't get enough, it threatens our physical health, our mental health, and our emotional well-being. And yet, most of us neglect it. We're probably all very familiar with the short-term impact of a bad night's sleep. We have less energy, we're irritable and impatient, we struggle to concentrate and to remember things. We also tend to crave unhealthy food and avoid going to the gym. But most of us will bounce back the next night and not worry about it too much. But what wasn't understood until more recently were some of the hidden costs of lack of sleep. And this is some of the background, the new science, which is making sleep more of a priority for everyone. So for example, lack of sleep interferes with our immune defenses. It actually makes us more vulnerable to colds and infectious diseases. So for example, just a few weeks ago, there was a new study by the University of California, San Francisco, which showed that people who sleep for less than 5 hours are 4 times more likely to catch a cold than people who sleep for 7 hours or more. There are hormonal changes as well. If you are trying to lose weight, then sleep is really important. So for example, the hormone insulin, which clears blood sugar from our body, we become less sensitive to it when we haven't had enough sleep. So we have more blood sugar going around in our bloodstream, which increases your risk of diabetes and makes you more prone to weight gain. There are so many effects. I'm not going to talk about them all because I want to get on to some questions, but it's worth knowing that sleep also affects your brain. So a recent brain imaging study took brain scans in men who were an average age of 54, so the same age as George Clooney. And when they took brain scans again 3 years later, they found that the brain cells actually atrophied or shrank more quickly in people who complained of poor sleep quality. So people who were having trouble getting to sleep or staying asleep through the night. So we can't say from that study that lack of sleep caused the deterioration in the brain, but we can say that the two were probably related. Finally, the strongest impacts of poor sleep are probably on our emotional health. So chronic poor sleepers are twice as likely to develop depression and less likely to recover when they're treated. It seems that when we're short of sleep, we're actually more likely to store in our memories negative emotional memories than positive and neutral ones. So we have a tint of negativity on daily life. So sleep is super, super important. Medicine is trying to catch up with the science of sleep, and I'm pretty sure that it won't be long before your doctor will be asking you not only about smoking and diet and exercise, but also about your sleep as a core pillar of health. But please don't just take my word for it. I have a prop. So this month's Scientific American highlights the power of sleep, some of the latest research. Do have a read, it's really interesting. But it is worth saying that Comcast NBCU are actually at the cutting edge when it comes to promoting better sleep. Okay, so that's just a bit of an intro, and I'm keeping an eye on these questions. Just one more reminder: if anything occurs to you that interests you while I'm talking, please do send me an email at healthy_week@cable.comcast.com. Okay, so I'm gonna crack on to the questions now. Dun, dun, dun. Okay, so the first question: does everyone need 7 to 8 hours sleep? Now, I can't see who actually asked this question, but let's call him Tom. Okay, Tom. Sleep is a biological characteristic. It's a bit like your height or your shoe size, so it's different for everyone. The most important thing is that you are the one who's going to know if you've had enough sleep. If you're feeling sleepy during the day, you probably haven't had enough sleep. If you're relying on caffeine to get you through the day, you probably haven't had enough sleep. So sleep experts from the National Sleep Foundation in the US have looked across a whole load of different studies and tried to work out what's average, what's normal for a range. And they have concluded that the average for a healthy adult to perform at their optimal best is between 7 and 9 hours. So the vast majority of us need at least 7 hours uninterrupted sleep to be at our best. Now, there are exceptions. There are short sleepers and there are long sleepers. And a few kind of lucky individuals really can thrive on 6 hours sleep, but they're pretty unusual. So it does depend a little bit on age. If you're a teenager, you actually need a bit more. And this is not that widely known, but the National Sleep Foundation recommends that teenagers get 8 to 10 hours sleep. And we know that an awful lot of teenagers are sleep deprived. If you're slightly older, if you're over 65, you probably need slightly less sleep. So between 7 and 8 hours, but still 7 hours is this kind of magic number. And it's worth knowing that the latest Gallup survey across the whole of the US, on average, reported that US adults get about 6.8 hours sleep. So we think that around about 40% of the population are a bit sleep deprived. So if you are, you're not alone, and there's lots of things that you can do about it. Okay, question 2. Can you train yourself to survive on less sleep? If only. I would have to say there really isn't any scientific evidence that you can train yourself for a sustained period of time, and I'm talking years here, to survive on less sleep. There are circumstances where people have to sleep for less time. So for example, if you are rowing solo across the Atlantic, you simply can't stop for a period of 7 or 8 hours at a time. So people have developed alternative mechanisms where you nap for kind of 40 minutes, stay awake for 4 hours, and then go back to sleep again. And they reckon that people can survive on this sort of cycle of naps and shorter wake times, but it's not something that can be sustained, and their performance in terms of restoring their physical strength, restoring proteins, for example, producing growth hormone, learning, memory consolidation. These things are not going to be able to happen quite as effectively if you're not getting your 7 to 8 hours of sleep. So in terms of the question, can you train yourself to survive on less sleep? With great difficulty. You're not going to be able to change your natural biological need, and you are the one who knows best exactly how much sleep you need. Okay, I can see lots of questions coming in here. I'm just going to do a quick skim down. A couple about sleep when dealing with stressful events, waking up in the middle of the night, reading on your tablet or cell phone. Okay, calming your mind before bedtime. Oh, and a great one about cottage cheese. Okay, I'll come on to these. Sleep improvements. If you are one of the sleep deprived, you are not making enough time for your sleep. My top tips are, first, test how much you need. Okay, so the first thing I want you to do is to make a note of how much sleep you're typically getting. To begin with, don't try and change it. Just stick to your normal routine if you have a routine, and record, for at least a week how much sleep you're really getting. And there's some things that will make this easier. So you might have like a wearable device, like a Jawbone, there are Fitbits, various things to help you track your sleep. So you kind of start a sleep diary, but you also want to write down how sleepy you're feeling during the day, maybe how many cups of coffee you're drinking, and then give yourself a break. Try and sleep for an extra half an hour. Try it for a week, maybe 2 weeks. See whether it makes any difference, and keep playing with the amount of sleep that you're having, and try and kind of be your own scientist. Try and work out how much you actually need. The second tip, massively important. Sleep is something that your body has to prepare for. It's a cycle every day. Your body has to anticipate when you're about to go to bed. So you need a routine. You need to train your body to know when it's about to wind down and get ready for bed. The best way to do this is to have a regular routine, a regular daily routine. Get up at the same time each day, and as far as possible, go to bed at the same time each night. That means your body can kind of anticipate what's going to happen. You'll start to produce melatonin, which is this hormone which helps you get off to sleep at the same time each day, and you just maintain a regular cycle. So routine is massively important for sleep. It's what we tell children to help them get to sleep, and adults are no different. It's very much about having a regular routine. One thing that I tried, which I thought was really helpful, was actually setting an alarm when it was time to wind down. So not necessarily to wake up in the morning, but setting an alarm at sort of 9 o'clock at night, when I had to force myself to switch off my laptop, not do any more work, maybe have a bath, get ready for bed. And if you can do that at the same time each night, then hopefully you should allow yourself that time to relax. Okay, I'm going to tackle a specific question. Okay, so how about if you're dealing with a stressful event, right? Okay, so I landed last night in LA. It took an hour for the taxi to arrive. When I arrived at the Airbnb, there was nobody there, and I was worrying about this morning and looking sleepy to I don't know how many people. So it was a little bit stressful, but there are a few tricks of the trade that I used. One of them was, it's called paradoxical intention. You actually tell yourself that it's okay to be awake. So you're lying in bed and you don't try and sleep. Simply relax. Tell yourself that you are in a warm, comfortable, safe place, and that actually it's absolutely fine to be awake. And as soon as you take away the anxiety about trying to sleep, you should actually find that you relax so much that you drift off to sleep. So that's one thing. Another thing, if you're worried about a stressful event, is of course just being as prepared as possible. And if you're lying there in bed with thoughts just racing around in your mind, make sure you have next to your bed a pen and paper and write down what's on your mind. Once it's written down, hopefully you can take it away from whizzing around in your mind and just put it on the side of the bed. It will be there in the morning. You don't have to worry about it. And that's another way to just kind of remove some of these kind of cognitive racing thoughts that are going through your mind. Okay, another question. Somebody else saying that they consistently wake up in the middle of the night as their mind is racing. So again, you could try the writing things down. One thing is, if you're waking up in the middle of the night repeatedly, you're probably forming quite a negative association between your bed and trying to get to sleep. And you might even find it stops you getting to bed when you first go to sleep at bedtime. So the general advice, if you wake up too often if you're waking up during the night, you can't get back to sleep. If you're lying there for more than about 15 minutes, get up, get out of bed. Go and do something quiet in dim light, read a really boring book until your eyes start to close, which means that you're actually feeling genuinely sleepy. If you're alert in bed and awake, it's not the place to be, okay? Be awake and alert outside of the bedroom, and keep the bedroom somewhere for when you're very sleepy. We generally say that in order to maintain a positive sleep-bed connection, the bedroom should be for sleep and intimate relations and nothing else. So the general advice is to keep your laptops, keep your phones outside of the bedroom. Some of you are probably thinking, what? But that's where I watch my best TV. Well, the reason that you're not really recommended to have TVs and even phones, tablets in the bedroom is because this hormone that helps you get off to sleep at night, called melatonin, is light sensitive. Okay, so as it gets darker, you produce more melatonin, which helps you get off to sleep naturally. If you have bright light, it suppresses melatonin and keeps you awake. And laptops and phones emit this particularly blue wavelength light, which inhibits melatonin. So it's going to keep you awake for longer. There was actually a really interesting study where they got a bunch of people to read before they went to bed. And some of them read books and some of them used an e-reader. Now, admittedly, they were reading for 4 hours before they go to bed, which is a lot longer than most of us would try, but they were trying to see whether they could really see an effect between an e-reader and a book. And what they found was that the e-reader people, they took slightly longer to get to sleep, but they also had lighter sleep. It didn't just affect, that period when you're trying to get off to sleep, but it actually affected a good chunk of the night. They were sleeping more lightly. So it seems that this stimulation with more blue light seems to inhibit us getting towards deeper, more restorative sleep. So sorry to be strict about the bedroom, but it's for sleep and intimacy and nothing else. Okay, back to another question. Dun, dun, dun. Okay, I am going to talk a little bit now about insomnia, because you may be wondering, like, at what point do I actually have a sleep problem, and when does my sleep problem get unusual? I mean, I think it's worth saying that an awful lot of us have sleep problems now and again, okay? So at any one time, we think that about 1 in 3 adults has either had difficulty getting to sleep, staying asleep through the night, or waking up too early. And for most of us, we'll bounce back just fine. But for about 1 in 10, maybe even 1 in 5 people as they get older, above the age of 60, will actually develop chronic insomnia. Now, this is where you have sleep problems for 3 nights a week or more, for 3 months or more. So it's really becoming something which bothers them during the day. And that's when it becomes a problem, when your lack of sleep at night actually interferes with your functioning during the day. And that could mean anything. It might mean a lack of concentration. It might mean just that you're really kind of low, miserable, anxious. You have relationship problems. Maybe you're not getting as much done at work as you would like to. At that point where it's interfering with your daily life, that's when we would characterize it as a sleep problem, as insomnia. And so at that point, you want to know the best treatment, right? This is really bothering you. You need help. And I think one of the best ways to think about how to solve insomnia is to think about what causes it in the first place. So insomnia is a condition of what we call hyperarousal, okay? Both your brain and your body are kind of charged up and you can probably feel it. You know, if you're lying in bed awake and your mind is whirring and you can't relax, it's because your whole body is just a little bit kind of tense and uptight. And the causes are very complicated, and they're different for everybody, but mostly it's a combination of things. One of them is if you're at higher risk. So if you're a woman, you're at higher risk. As you get older, you're at higher risk. If you're just generally quite a kind of worrying sort of person, you're at higher risk. And then typically what happens is that a stressor comes along. So it might be a new job. It might be a particularly big project at work, which is stressing you out. So you start worrying about that. It starts interfering with your sleep, and then you compensate. So you start drinking more caffeine. Just one sec. But maybe you drink caffeine later on in the day, which keeps you awake at night. Maybe you start napping during the day because you're so tired, but napping during the day tends to interfere with your sleep drive at night. So your sleep patterns become very disrupted, very irregular. Okay, so you've developed insomnia. What are you going to do about it? You need a combination of ways to deal with the thoughts, the cognitive factors, and also the behaviors. So the routine, getting into a positive sleep routine. So we call this approach cognitive behavioral therapy, or CBT. So it's a whole suite of approaches. So it includes relaxation techniques like mindfulness to help you get to sleep at night. It includes keeping a sleep diary so that you can monitor changes in your sleep over time. And it involves kind of addressing some of the unhealthy ways that you think and feel about your sleep. And CBT really works. So at least 70% of people who try it end up with cured sleep. A much better, healthier sleep pattern for many years. So it addresses the root causes. Some people will turn to sleeping pills, hypnotics, as a short-term solution. And while I can't give any individual advice about whether sleeping pills are appropriate, it's worth knowing that they are very much like a band-aid on the problem. They will help you get to sleep temporarily, but they are not going to address the root causes. And nobody should be taking sleeping pills for more than a month. That's good sort of medical evidence for that, because you build up a tolerance and also a dependence. So if you really want to address the root cause of your sleep problem, CBT is where it's at. Great. But there's a problem. Very few people are actually trained to deliver CBT, and this is the same issue in the US and the UK. So there's very few physicians who are trained in CBT specifically for insomnia. And this was the issue that inspired my boss, a guy called Peter Hames, who developed insomnia and couldn't get any help from his doctor other than sleeping pills. But his sister was a psychologist and said, Peter, what you need is CBT. Now, at the time, he couldn't find a therapist to see him face to face, but he found a book. And I have the very book here, Overcoming Insomnia and Sleep Problems by Colin A. Espy, who is now a professor at the University of Oxford. And this kind of, I don't know if you can see this, self-help guide takes you through all these tools and techniques. It includes keeping a sleep diary and so on. And 6 weeks later, Peter, having flicked through the book, he read it all, he followed all the instructions, he was cured. And he thought, wow, why can't more people access this? And so what he actually did was to go and camp outside Colin Espy's office until Colin agreed to team up and basically transform this book, which I don't know if you can see this. It's not frightfully interactive. It's kind of quite text heavy. And Peter wanted to make it a bit more fun. And so he and Colin combined it into this online program called Sleepio. And Sleepio has been designed to feel more like entertainment than medicine. The whole CBT course is delivered over 6 weeks. By this animated professor called the Prof, who has a Scottish accent. He's not actually modelled on Colin, the Scottish professor, but apparently the Scottish voice is very soothing, so that's why we have a Scottish Prof. Anyway, over 6 weeks, you'll learn this combination of tools and techniques, which will really hope to address the causes of insomnia. So if you think you might benefit, what can you do about it? Well, the first step is to go to, you want to go to the Healthy Week website and search for Sleepio. And the first step is to test your sleep. So how do you know whether you've actually got insomnia or you've just got perfectly normal sleep? Your sleep is exactly as it should be. Well, you need to take a sleep test. And we've been working with Comcast to develop a 2-minute sleep test. And that's why I have this very special t-shirt here. I wanted to make sure you could see it. What's your sleep score? So the idea is that everybody across Comcast can test their sleep, 2 minutes, and you'll get a sleep score. And 10 is really good, and we probably can't help you loads to improve your sleep, but we can probably give you a bit of information. And anything sort of 5 and below suggests you really could definitely do with some help with your sleep. And by completing your sleep test, you'll actually be able to go on and complete the Sleepio course for free. So all Comcast NBCU employees can access Sleepio for free as part of this very special Healthy Week service, and also your partners. So if you have a partner who is sleeping poorly, then they absolutely can use the Sleepio program. So I really hope you'll give at least the sleep test a go, and if you find what the prof has to say interesting, then I hope you'll follow the Sleepio program. It definitely works, but it's definitely not an easy option. So you have to commit to it. It's only about 20 minutes a week for 6 weeks, but really try and stick to the instructions. Okay, I'm back to the questions. I've got a few more minutes left. Is it true that eating cottage cheese before going to bed promotes natural HGH while you sleep? I actually don't know what you mean by HGH, but I can tell you that there is no strong scientific evidence that eating cheese before you go to bed promotes dreams or better sleep or worse sleep. There's really no there's no strong evidence that eating any foods before you go to bed actually will influence your sleep, except for if you eat very high fat or fatty foods within an hour of going to bed. The chances are that your digestive system is working overtime, and you probably will have disrupted sleep. So it's best to avoid big meals before you go to bed. Cheese, maybe for individuals it may have a special effect, but in general, scientific evidence is that cheese will not affect your sleep or your dreams. Yes, sorry, my wonderful assistant, and in this case, Alyssa Morgenstern has set up this Q&A as reminding me that you can find the Sleepio link at upluswellbeing.com, or you can even type in a direct URL, which is www.sleepio.com/work/Comcast. Okay, a couple more questions. How about, can you avoid jet lag? Okay, this is a very pertinent question for me, having just flown in from the UK. So jet lag occurs because your body has an intrinsic 24-hour rhythm. It expects you to be active during the day and to sleep at night. So when you fly across more than 3 time zones and you're suddenly eating or socializing when your body is physiologically unprepared, it can have all manner of unpleasant effects: sleepiness, nausea, GI problems, headache, upset stomach. It is a pretty nasty thing. And of course we adapt, but it typically takes 5 to 6 days. So is there anything that we can do to accelerate the progress of adaptation? Well, this 24-hour cycle is actually programmed partly by light. So we have an intrinsic rhythm, but it's also controlled by light. So we can actually use light to help us adjust. So for example, if you arrive somewhere in the afternoon, you've traveled through the night, but you know that you shouldn't really be going to sleep until bedtime, make sure you go outside, get lots of exposure to natural light. That will make you feel more alert without sort of eating or without drinking lots of caffeine. And that should help you keep alert. One of the good things to do when you're thinking about traveling is actually to prepare in advance. So I was flying west. So a few days before I left, I actually started to going to bed later. And if you can adjust a few days in advance so that you start going to bed later, or if you're flying east so that you start going to bed earlier, then your body will start to sort of pre-adjust. Also, other things that help us control this circadian rhythm are meal times. So as soon as possible, start to adjust the times of your meals to the destination that you're heading to. So as soon as you get on the plane, try and follow the routine of the place that you're going to, rather than necessarily the routine of the airline, and shift your watch as soon as you get on that plane. When you arrive, I would recommend obviously trying to stay awake during the day so that you're going to sleep at the same time as the destination that you have got to. If you're really, really sleepy, do have a nap. But in general, the advice about naps is to keep them relatively short. So if you have a restorative nap for about 15 or 20 minutes, you're not going to disrupt your natural sleep drive too much, and you should just be able to get into a kind of a reasonably restorative sleep. If you sleep for sort of more than half an hour, you'll actually start to get into deep sleep. Now, this isn't a problem in terms of restoration, but what actually happens is if you get woken up while you're in really deep sleep, you'll be really groggy, and it will actually it could take you as long as your nap to recover from the nap. It's called sleep inertia. So you'll be extra sleepy for an extra hour afterwards, which might kind of defeat the purpose of a nap. So if you are going to nap, if you're feeling very, very tired, if you're driving for a long distance, for example, it's a really great idea, but keep that nap short, about 15 to 20 minutes. No more than that. Oh gosh, time flies when you're having fun. Look, it's 9:30, so I probably better wrap up quite soon. I guess the other things that I wanted to say was a quick plug, actually. I'm here in LA for the rest of the day, and Ferdows Mohammed, who is sitting quietly here, I think she might have fallen asleep actually, has arranged a lunchtime sleeposium. So if you do happen to be at the Universal offices, we're doing a talk today, and then on Friday I'm actually going to be in Philadelphia also doing some talks there. So please do come along and find out more about sleep, ask more questions about sleep. It would be lovely to see you. Okay, it's 9:31. I'm gonna let you guys, sorry, LA time, it's 9:31. I will let you guys get back to work. But thank you very, very much for joining. And yeah, sleep well. Bye.